It seems like we just recently met, but here we are again for our quarterly commissioner meeting. So I understand Commissioner Raynon is in someplace warm and hot as he keeps dabbing his head. And I think Commissioner Kelsey, we're saving you money by having you at the meeting today. Welcome everyone. It's nice to see everybody, and thank you for attending. If the commissioners could turn on their cameras when you get a chance, since we'll get the meeting started. Morning, Chief.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Chief.
No, I apologize for everybody. The size of everybody on the screen, it makes everybody is popping on. So please, again, just for the sake of Zoom land, if you can't get my attention by waving or put up your little virtual hand, then that moves you to the top of the screen so I could better see you. But if I don't get my attention, just yell out. I don't want to miss anybody, and make sure we keep everything moving forward. So with that, welcome everyone. This is a call to order the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission meeting for March the 9th, 2022. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. And I think just from a look of all the faces here present, we have a quorum, but we'll start out with roll call, please.
All right, Chair Myers.
Present.
Vice Chair Quinn. Commissioner Snaza. Commissioner Satterberg.
Present.
Commissioner Kelsey.
Present.
Commissioner Webb.
He's here.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Batiste.
Present.
Commissioner Sapp.
Present.
Commissioner Robinson. Commissioner Raynon.
E Chef said, I'm here.
Commissioner Couch.
Here.
Commissioner Anaya.
Here.
Commissioner Hunter.
Here.
Commissioner Kendricks. Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Pickup.
Here.
Commissioner Joseph.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Logue.
Present.
Commissioner Kondawal. And Commissioner Drever-Scott.
Present.
Okay. All right, that's 15.
I believe we have a statutory quorum and a numerical quorum. So hopefully, if any other commissioners come on, if I don't see them pop on, we'll make a note in the minutes, Lacey, when you see them, and when they join the meeting. So thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Chair's report. Today's fairly brief since we are spreading our work out amongst several meetings. I'm looking forward to the special meeting we have scheduled for the March 30th. There should be a really good discussion, and I appreciate everybody doing the research and reading materials as they come out in advance, as well as any other positions or concerns or issues that we would bring forth and have a robust discussion here at that special meeting. I know that it's not on my report, but I think at some point we should have the discussion about when we would be able to meet in person. With COVID protocols changing in King County, and of course, whether or not the director wants our germs on the campus or not. But some of the discussions, like I'm thinking about the one on the 30th, would probably be a discussion, although it's convenient for Zoom, especially for our Eastern Washington commissioners, sometimes those discussions would be nice to be had in person. I see Commissioner Robinson has joined us for the record. And so if we get the chance where we can have an in-person meeting, I would leave it up to the commissioners to indicate with staff when that would be, and if we could facilitate that, so at least we could get together at some point, which would mean Commissioner Raynon would have to return from Hawaii. Sorry. Thank you for being here, by the way. That's pretty, that's honorable to be present when you're out doing obviously things with you and your family. So thank you. One of the things that I've mentioned in the past, and prior to most of you probably joining the commission, is we've had a lot of robust discussions about expanding the ability and the hours of training for our police officers in the state of Washington and our corrections officers, specifically corrections going from 4-week to a 10-week academy. And the academy, when I went through, was 12 weeks, and now it's 20 weeks. So we've recognized that more training is a good thing. And one of the pieces that perhaps lacks, at least in the recognition of the total hours that an officer receives in training, is the fact that most agencies, not necessarily all, do put officers after BLEA through a field training program. Field training program is taking the recruit when they graduate from a BLEA, and then they go through different phases, whether it's a PTO or an FTO model, to starts out with the recruit watching the training officer learn the job on the job, and then the phases switch from the training officer doing the work and the recruit watching to the recruit doing half the work and the training officer watching, and then to the recruit doing most of the work and the training officer watching. And until at the very end, in shadow phase, the recruit is almost out on their own, and then they're shadowed by a senior, the training officer, to make sure they've learned the basic stuff and they can apply what they learned in the academy, again, being basic academy, out onto the street. It's the on-the-job part of the training. And so when I think one of the misnomers, especially for our new commissioners, when we talk about officers receive 720 hours of basic training, that does not reflect the fact that they usually also receive 440 hours of field training at a minimum. Some agencies more, maybe some agencies less. But I would like to propose as something for the commission to consider as a potential WAC in the near future. Knowing my term expires in June, I would like to see the commission consider taking official action to create a WAC, the Washington Administrative Code, that would require agencies for entry-level officers post-academy to complete at least 440 hours of a documented field training program at the agency that they are hired at, they look at. Most agencies, that would not be an issue. They're already doing it anyway. But I think what it does for us as a commission is it sets forth an expectation that we expect recruits to have basic training, but we also expect them to have on-the-job training so that they have a pretty good handle and grasp of what they're doing when they're actually out on the road handling calls and working with citizens directly. Now, it takes, as we know from Malcolm Gladwell's book, that it takes about 10,000 hours to be proficient in anything we do. And that's for a police officer is about 5 years. So we do typically see corrections officers, they hit that magic mark about 5 years when kind of the light bulb comes on and they've kind of got stuff figured out. But in the interim, I think we need to at least make sure that as an expectation of training and accountability throughout the state of Washington, that we have recruits that complete a 720-hour basic academy, and we have recruits that complete at least 440 hours of field training. And that would be part of the requirement for their training as a peace officer. Any
So,
discussion?
Chair Myers, this is Commissioner
Commissioner?
Robinson. Yeah, so I just want to say I really appreciate you bringing that forward as we continue to try to make what we're doing here meaningful and more impactful and better for all of our human family. So that, you know, on both sides of the badge, I think something like that just makes complete and total sense. And so I support really sussing that out and getting that established, hopefully well before you leave office, sir.
Thank you. So with that, I would make a motion. I don't tip. Oh, Commissioner Raynon.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also that as part of that on-the-job training, the field training, it would be great if we could incorporate some type of training with regard to the communities in which those officers will be working. So, you know, if they're going to be working in a Native community, as part of that on-the-job training, have some training centered around working with the Native community, working with the tribal community, any of the different types of communities that the officers are going to be working with. I would hope we could incorporate some of that, some cultural training, cultural introductions, those types of things, so that the officers get familiar with the communities that they're going to be serving. So I love the idea of requiring that field officer training at a minimum level, but I would also suggest that we incorporate some cultural training into that as well.
Sure. I would hope that an agency is, during their field training, is sensitive to those matters, and obviously and that's why for field training, it really is very agency specific, because that's where the officers take what they learned, the basic in the academy, and apply it to their agency and their community with the people they serve. But I think that would be definitely something aspirational we would outline of the type of things we'd want to see. For me, it's my thought here is, let's just memorialize our expectation of the amount of training and hours of training. One of the frustrations I have heard in the past testifying on behalf of the commission is that barbers receive more hours of training than a police officer. And I think that's only because we're not comparing apples to apples. In this case, by requiring 440 hours of documented field training, we're well over 1,000 hours of actual documented training between the academy and their field training. Some agencies may do more. And I'm not saying we necessarily have to apply this to a lateral officer, because that can be, sometimes lateral officers move through field training a little bit faster because they have experience. But I think when it comes to a recruit, I believe that person should have the foundation established by the academy, as well as a field training at 12 weeks is pretty common. That's 440 hours. Other discussion?
Well, I might steal your thunder, but you're going to make the motion. So I would make the motion that we create the WAC to require it.
Great. As chair, I try not to make motions, so I appreciate that. There's a motion to create the WAC, start the process to create the WAC to require a minimum of 440 hours of field training after the academy, graduation of academy recruit from Basic Law Enforcement Academy. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Couch? Oh, Commissioner Sapp seconded. Commissioner Couch, discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask real quick if throughout the process, as we kind of flesh out the details, I was hoping that we wouldn't attach the 440 to it in case we decide throughout this process that maybe it needs to be greater or maybe a little bit less. Just that I'm supportive of opening this and creating the WAC. I just wanted to kind of keep that number open.
So the motion was made. John, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kelsey, what was your motion to create the WAC for field training, or did we specify hours?
No, I would actually prefer just to create the WAC, and then in that process, as Commissioner Couch discusses, we fine tune. There are some basic FTO programs out there that are very specific as far as times. And so we can find what works the best for the majority of everybody. And then what we require is a minimum, doesn't have to make, take away from anybody else being able to do more than that.
Yeah, and I think that's the intent of having at least meeting those minimums like we have talked about. And I think that's also, if we create the WAC, that would be, as Commissioner Raynon indicated, some of the things that kind of similar to a background investigation. We don't tell you exactly how to do a background, but we have some minimum things in the WAC that you do have to do. And maybe this is a similar thing. Commissioner Draviscat, I'm sorry, someday I'll get it.
No problem. I would just like to add that I think that the minimum of 440, I think we should set that as the floor as we move on with discussions. We can talk about more and what precisely, how into the weeds we need to get into the WAC as to specifics of the training, but I think we should just start out as a floor as 440. I think that that's entirely reasonable.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, before us is a motion to start the WAC process to require a post-basic law enforcement academy field training requirement with the details to follow as the discussion is indicated. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I apologize, it's so awkward.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson, thank you.
Aye.
Commissioner Logue, Commissioner Couch, Commissioner Ayana. Naya, sorry, I'll get it right one of these days. All right, are there any, Commissioner Robinson, is that an aye or is that okay? Are there any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion carries. Thank you. The second part I have under the chair's report is, as we've discussed in previous meetings, commission rule of order or onboarding packet that the staff have been working on for our new commissioners. My Vice Chair Quinn has agreed to take this project on as a lead. So if you are interested in assisting him in helping to create any sort of document as far as rules of order that the commission would like to follow, I will defer that to Vice Chair Quinn. I think it's important to note that because some of what I have tried to do with chair is historical knowledge and operations here, but even if the commission were to decide to set a rules of order, that's nothing that says that the commission could change it. This body has that authority. This body is a working body of thoughts, ideas, and processes. So that is subject to change. And I think that's why it would probably be kind of a working document. Commissioner Johnson? Oh, okay. Sorry, your hand. So that's in process. And I think if you'd like to take a few moments to share with the proposal that was sent out to the commissioners in advance regarding some of the orientation ideas that staff felt was important.
And I want to take as little time as possible because I know you have a lot to discuss. So thank you so much. In your packet is kind of a proposal of what we believe should be in the packet. We really want you to either add to it, take away. We think that information that we have in that list should really get you started. The strategic plan, I talked about that a little bit at the last meeting, lots of information in that, but we want to also give you singularly some of the information that we think would be really helpful for you. So it's not a rule and it's not set in stone. It was just kind of us getting this started because I know many of you expressed, we don't want to just talk about this, we want to do this. So we thought that was a great way to get it started. And I appreciate Vice Chair Quinn taking this on. And we're here to help with whatever you want us to do. And I know that's mostly the rules of order, but the list of information, please send Lacey back. If you think that we should add something that we missed, send that information over to Lacey because we're happy to add. And we have a lot of information going on and a lot of building happening here at CJTC. And as we move through, we're going to keep you updated. We just believe that this will get you started to kind of get to know and familiarize yourself with what goes on here at CJTC. So thank you.
And some of that is procedural, like you have to go through the training as required as an appointee. You have to go through the Open Public Meetings Act training, and there's a refresher required. So by then too, hopefully the commission will have your emails assigned and all that kind of nuts and bolts type stuff. But more so, and I did share the email. Hopefully you had a chance to review it that I sent in response to the chief of Newport regarding their variance request that we spent a lot of time discussing last meeting, to hopefully share some context of what we've done in the past as far as what the commission and the commission reaffirmed at the last meeting too, is when we are to hear a request, when would we hear it, why would we hear it, or why would we not hear it? And then the balancing the interest of what it is that the agency is asking for with your time and the time of the staff to process those type of requests. So having the knowledge of those WACs, having the knowledge of the RCWs, and then setting forth what the commission itself wants to do is part of what that historical knowledge is. And that comes from the decisions that were made before and the decisions that were made by this body and then future bodies as the commission evolves and changes. And a note for the record, our Vice Chair Quinn has joined us. Thank you. So we were just talking about you, so it's apropos that you would pop in. It was all nice things, of course, but if you are interested in helping Commissioner Quinn with any rules of order for the commission itself, please contact him and we'll make sure he has his email available to you, and hopefully we'll get those CJTC emails up and running soon. Commissioner Couch.
Thank you, Chair Myers. I guess a question for the group, or maybe the chair, since you've had a lot of time on the commission. Do we have any obligation through the governor's office as a board or commission group to have an advisory manual? Is there any just maybe points that we need to hit there as this document is created?
Advisory manual, like,
I know there's
Covering.
other, you know, if you, the different commissions you can find, they have advisory manuals that they're kind of governing documents. So I didn't know if there's any specific points that we, you know, have to hit there. I know like the gambling commissioner, you can find different manuals that those groups have developed that govern those bodies. I just thought that was maybe
there's
somewhere to
nothing
look.
created. Yeah, nothing created currently, but I think that's kind of what we're discussing, is creating whatever you want to call it, you know, onboarding, a manual, rules of order, you know, whatever title you want to put on it. I just think it's important that, especially for our new commissioners, to understand that this too is only, so at some point you have to have a body that makes these decisions, and so there's no one to turn to tell you how to make the decisions you should make, because that's why you're here. So I would say what my suggestion is, being on the commission for 13 years, is that as we listen and we honor the people that come to us and join us and leave from us, you know, you take bits and pieces of that, and that's kind of what creates that working document, hopefully. So it provides guidance, but it doesn't mean it's not that something would change or something could be different in the future. But currently, no, there is no advisory manual or anything like that. The commission.
Right. No, I understand there's no manual. I just didn't know if there was any specific criteria that we have to hit. Like, I'm aware that the Office of Independent Investigations, that body just, you know, is drafting they're calling it their advisory board manual. So just curious if there's things that specific points that we need to hit when we create ours. That was all.
No, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to look at those other documents as a template. I mean, I think we all understand that there's no point in reinventing the wheel. So, but I just want the commission to understand, from my perspective, don't be afraid. This is a living document, and if it becomes a document, this is a living process here, and we need to honor the people that are here and work through those things, listen to each other, make decisions, and move forward. Vice Chair Quinn?
Yeah, just briefly in response to Commissioner Couch and Executive Director Alexander, I think there's an opportunity for us. So I'm going to just pick up where you left off, to see what exists, find out what works, and then this smaller committee can come back to this full body with a recommendation and a discussion. So the whole, at least as I see it, it's an opportunity to collaborate with the executive director, collaborate with the commissioners who are interested in helping develop these procedures. And so for those who volunteer, very much appreciate it. And then we'll come to this body and share the recommendation, and then we'll decide from there. It doesn't have to be, I think if we can demystify and build some transparency in how we do it, and do it in a way that's collaborative, that builds on institutional knowledge, but also builds on folks' lived experiences and serving on other commissions, great. I mean, I've served on the African American Commission for 6 years. So I bring that into this space. I've served on this as well. So we can get to a point where we can be in a position where we are transparent, we develop a recommendation, and maybe build a cadence, or this is how we arrive at a process. And I see Executive Director.
So I would like to
Alexander.
Thank you. I'd like to suggest that we have an onboarding packet and then an advisory manual. I think they really should be two different documents, because the onboarding packet is something like just immediate. Here's how here's how many meetings to expect. Here's where you locate this. Here's your, your shirt, Commissioner Quinn. This is when you'll receive your shirt and your entry card and how that works, those type of things. And then separately, an advisory manual that is more about procedural information and things like that, so we can refer back to it when we run into certain issues or things that we go, well, how was this handled historically? Because with Chair Myers moving on, a lot of historical knowledge is going to move along with him. So we want to capture all of that so that we do have some consistency. So that's just a suggestion. I'm happy to work with you all on both. But the onboarding is packet is something we'd like to get out as soon as possible. And the advisory manual could take a little bit longer.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Executive Director Alexander. To me, that just makes perfect sense. And I also just felt compelled to chime in on the shirt and badge thing. I've just put my name in that hat, still trying to figure that thing out. And that's my way of just saying, hey, I haven't gotten one yet. I know some of the newer commissioners haven't gotten theirs.
Okay, so twice it was sent to you. I know I checked with Norma a couple of times on it, so I don't know where our disconnect is there, but I do know yours was sent out with the others. And we might want to refresh an address or something, because Norma left here one afternoon, said this is specifically for Commissioner Robinson. And that was so we'll check in on that for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. The one thing that I do know, and just kind of bring it up in the space so clearly, so this is on record, right, is that there was one delivery that failed. I never received the second one.
Okay.
So somebody's running around with your shirt on. And I will note for the record, Commissioner Satterberg was sporting his shirt just to rub it in case you didn't see that. There it is. There it is. So
maybe that's
but in all seriousness, the shirt honors your time and your energy. If you don't want one, that's fine. But I think what it does is it honors your energy and your time and respects your commitment to this process. And it also identifies you readily when you spend some time at the academy, either Spokane or in Burien. I think it's important that recruits and staff see that you're a commissioner and that you're there to be part of the process and to own what goes on and what we do. So, and if you see somebody running around with Commissioner Robinson's shirt on, let us know. But thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so, and I will say I'm not trying to dump this on Vice Chair Quinn. I'm happy to participate in any way I can to help provide some information or background for either of the documents. I'm just being sensitive because I look at the commission as having changed in direction and makeup, and certainly makeup, maybe not direction, but I don't want to be that guy that's like, well, that's the way we've always done it, and so we're going to have to keep. And I'm not that. I don't feel that way, and I want to honor each of your experiences and what you bring to the table. So I will be happy to participate to whatever extent is needed and help create whatever you feel comfortable with creating. My only caveat is just know it can change, and that's most important. That's why this body is such an eclectic mix of folks from all over the state and all different backgrounds. And it is too, I would mention real briefly that we did honor former Commissioner Hohenberg when he retired from the Kennewick Police Department after 43 years, and he was 11 years on the commission. And so some of that institutional knowledge, does go when we go, and so hopefully we can share whatever we can in the time that we have. Any other questions for the chair? All right, hearing none, we'll launch right into the executive director's report. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. And I will again be brief. Commissioner Hohenberg, they really celebrated him. I think there's a big giant Toyota sign over there, and Jarrell said he saw it, and congratulations on his service to the community. And I watched a few of the videos from the news feeds, and it was really a very nice celebration. He is well loved and respected, and we will miss him quite a bit for his institutional knowledge and just his friendship. So I will move on to our BLEA stats. We still have 7 classes here in Burien, 1 over in Spokane that's going right now. We also have 1 COA class. We graduated a class on March the 2nd, and then we started another one yesterday. So things are still moving at a really nice clip here. We're happy about that. I'm sure our agencies are also happy about that. As time moves on, we are going to have more classes on campus. So I look forward to the commissioners having in-person meetings. Not sure where we're going to put you, but we will try to figure that piece out. I know it is nicer to have those robust conversations in person, but we're going to be bursting at the seams very soon here. Ledge session is almost over. I think tomorrow is sine die. A lot of things happened during ledge session. We are looking pretty good at the last time I checked the budget on the things that we had requested. So I'm grateful to our legislative partners that have really helped us and recognize some of the needs of CJTC. And you probably all received an email talking about the state of WSCJTC. And that's something I'm trying to do. And Commissioner Raynon talked about this the last time, is how do we increase our communication? So this is something that was already in the works. This will be our first time doing this Facebook Live State of CJTC. We're going to try really hard. I'm going to try to share information that I know may be important to everyone, our legislative partners, our commissioners, so we can get some consistent information going out there about what we're doing here, what some of the numbers look like, and how we're progressing and moving towards some really great goals that we have. And, you know, we always say good information is great, but if nobody knows about it, then how good is it? So we're going to try and improve on that. And I want to thank Commissioner Drevescrat for being here on March 2nd for graduation. It was really nice to have a commissioner here and be able to introduce one of our commissioners as someone that's participating in our graduation ceremony. Again, I know that it's important to the families, it's important to the recruits. They hear about the commission, but they don't know who's on the commission really, and they probably don't take the time to look it up. We also had Representative Orwell and Council Member Finch here to spend time with us, and they had a graduate from Kent. And so we just really want to thank everyone for supporting graduation. It's a big deal to the recruits. It's a big deal to us, even though they're happening every month. I still look at it as one of the greatest days. The day they start and the day they finish is really a lot of fun. And we reinstated something that we used to do here before COVID, where all of the classes that are not graduating line up out here in the courtyard, and the class that is graduating walks through and they salute and clap for them and make it a big celebration. And the more celebratory that day can be, the happier we all are. So you're always welcome. We will send out a list of when graduations are, but we are having graduation every month. So you're welcome to be here. We currently have 269 basic training recruits on campus today. It's a lot of people on this campus, and it's only going to get better. We have a COA graduation that is happening on March the 24th. We have another BLEA graduation that is happening on March the 22nd. So 112 people are waiting to get into the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. We are at 4 months still, but if all the funding goes through during this legislative session, and we'll know for sure tomorrow, I don't like to say it's happened until it happens, then we will increase the number of classes and we will be able to reduce that wait time. I know that will be good news for a lot of our partners out there. We understand all the turnover that's happening, and we want to do everything we can to support. So we're meeting, I think it's next week, with Commissioner Sapp to do a presentation for her about the COA training, the 10-week training, as well as talking about what we can do to increase the number of COA classes we can get through. Because there's 66 COA recruits waiting to start a class right now, and we only do classes of 30, and they don't start every month. And so that makes that wait more intense and longer. So we have to work out a plan where we can talk to legislators about that as well, because we don't want to forget any of our partners. So I think that is all. I will stop there because I know we have a lot to talk about. Oh, I have to say this. So you're talking about number of hours for training. To be a licensed cosmetologist, you have to have 1,600 hours of training. So that's just something for us to think about when we're having these discussions. I know that because I'm a licensed cosmetologist. So thank you very much for my time, and we can move on from me unless anyone has any questions for me.
Well, that kind of moves the bar up a little higher than we expected, but thank you for sharing that with us. All right, any questions of the director? All right. Next on our agenda is the new business, which is to approve the meeting minutes from the meeting of February 22nd, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion made to approve the minutes,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Logue. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Since it's on orange paper, if you printed it out, it took a lot of time and ink up in the printer. But all right. Hearing no discussion regarding the motion. If there's not an objection, the meeting minutes will be approved. Is there any objection to the meeting minutes being approved? Hearing no objection, the meeting minutes are approved. And so, Lacey, you can affix my digital signature on there if you would, please. Next up, K9 applications. Valerie, would you like to get us up to speed? And then my understanding is staff has these processes. We can either process each person individually or we can process them as a group. I will leave it up to you, but we'll have Valerie explain the process of the K9 applications and what we're looking for, and then we can go from there.
Good morning, commissioners. The rules established to certify K9 evaluators was developed and passed by the commission in 2017 to ensure consistency in training and responsibility for K9 teams in Washington state. In December, the commission also adopted the K9 model policy that adds a secondary layer to this process. The foundation of the K9 team certification program relies on the expertise of the K9 evaluators. The evaluator applications before you have met all standards that are required and that were established by the commission. Their applicants are all in good standing with their agencies and with the certification division. Is the commission prepared to vote on recertification? There's 23 in front of you for recertification. I have 2 brand new ones. Also, if you have any questions, I can try to answer anything you may have.
So just to parse this down, as far as the recertification, and to clarify what these officers do is that they represent the commission to make sure that these different types of K9 teams are meeting the minimum standards, and then they sign off on that on behalf of the CJTC. And as they are appointed by the CJTC, then they fall under the umbrella of liability protection for those attorneys that are taking notes, no offense. It falls under the liability protections of the commission so that when they are certifying a K9 team on behalf of the commission, they don't incur personal liability or liability on their agency in doing that process. And it was important in previous action by the commission that we have a K9 certification program so that there is some oversight into the training and the teams that are out there. The one time there was a robust discussion at this body about whether we should even be certifying teams or not. And we heard very loud and clear from the community as well as from law enforcement that they felt it was an important process to make sure that the teams at least meet the minimum qualifications. And these people are the ones that are doing that testing to make sure that's happening. Vice Chair Quinn.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's appropriate to also kind of, some folks on the commission participated in, but I'm wondering if Mike Devine can speak to like the kind of separate advisory group that kind of help inform the process and or, kind of how we're incorporating what we've developed.
The K9 model policy was attached. I don't know if everybody got to read that. Sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Quinn. Sure. For the panel members that may not have been seated when we discussed the K9 model policy, House Bill 1064 required the commission to produce a K9 model policy, excuse me, to guide reporting standards, use of force standards, training standards for the patrol canines used throughout the state. I believe at this time there's approximately 158 patrol canine teams. That panel was seated in August. Commissioner Quinn, Commissioner Robinson participated, along with 24 other organizations or represented groups, both community, labor, and law enforcement. Over the period of 4 months, We had many long, robust discussions to meet the standards of House Bill 1064. And we came up with a model policy that's posted on the CJTC website to guide the use of canines throughout the state of Washington. And throughout that discussion, we actually, I believe we enhanced the standards of training and reporting, especially in the areas of use of force, what that use of force looked like, what the deployment standards look like, and what the interagency reporting standards were, so that if the commission or any other body asked for a end of the year report or audit of the use of force, deployment logs, training logs of the individual agencies, then that would be available. CJTC also created reporting forms for the use of force with a police canine, and came up with a definition of serious bodily injury, which was required by 1064 to be included in the model policy. So that kind of, in a nutshell, it was a almost 5 month long process. And I believe the Commissioner Quinn and Robinson know that there was at least 18 different drafts of the policy, but I think we came up with a very workable, usable document that I think benefited both the community and law enforcement.
Okay, I'm going to backtrack just a moment because I apologize. But what is before us right now exactly that's being requested of the commission? I have on my agenda canine applications.
Evaluator
approving?
applications, yes, sir.
Okay, so so we can parse this out. The canine application, the evaluator application is what I was referring to about. These are folks that sign off on the evaluation of the canine teams, and you'll see from the list that that there are different type of disciplines for canine teams: explosive dogs, narcotics, and then there's patrol. Sometimes the patrol off dogs are cross-trained for narcotics. I don't know of any that are cross-trained for explosives in the patrol. Oh, I stand corrected. There's one right there. Okay, so what these evaluators have to do is meet the minimum criteria to be an evaluator. Then they have to be appointed as an evaluator by the commission. So that's, I think, maybe easier to go back to that screen. If the commission wants to evaluate each one of these folks individually, or if they want to do this as a group, according to the spreadsheet, they have met the minimum qualifications, which is their name, their agency that's sponsoring them, the discipline for which they would be the expert to do the qualification evaluation, the application that they went through, whether or not they have those previous experience, and then they've completed the bias class and their certification is a good standing. Commissioner Raynon.
So I have a question about the date of last bias class column. There's a couple there that don't have a date. It just says yes. So what does that mean? Because we don't have a date that we just, I'm assuming it means they've taken it, but they didn't provide a date. So
Good question.
Anyway.
Yes, sir. I provided the information that they gave me. I also reached out for more clarification, and I was not really provided any more than that they received it and they submitted either an email documentation or it was put into their letter from their agency stating that they took it, but I did not receive an actual date, and I did not find it on their training transcripts from CJTC. So at that point, I had to put yes, and then I didn't have anything else.
Right.
Go ahead, Commissioner Farina.
Right. So we don't actually know, whether that date, whether they completed that training 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 2 years ago. Right. So if that's a requirement, I think we need to have. And if there's a minimum time within which they were required to take that, then I would suggest that that's an incomplete application.
Well, It's not an incomplete application. The K-9 model policy that was just passed in December has that as a new requirement. I knew that commissioners would probably want to know, especially Quinn and Robinson that were on the model policy. I was trying to be a little proactive in finding out if this had actually been taken and when it was taken, but it's not an actual requirement out of the application packet prior to January. So since that's very, very new, I wouldn't say that it is a fail that they have not actually have a date on there. Since, like I said, it just passed. I'm adding it to the application for the next, within the 5 years, because they're certified for 5 years. I hope that explains it a little bit.
It does, and that was gonna be my next question. Do all of these applicants meet the new standard that was just adopted? Because I would think we would want our certified K-9 evaluators to meet that standard. That was that new standard. So that's just my thought, and so that's all.
Commissioner Johnson, you had your hand up too?
The question I was going to ask just got answered, but I'd also like to say, if the new requirement is 5 years and you have to renew your bias training, like we have one person that's at 2017, I guess before approving, I'd want to see that be renewed, and you know, things like that, because he's right there on the cusp of needing to renew that. That's all I have to say about that.
I believe in the
Thank you,
new
Commissioner
model
Johnson.
policy, it does state that they have to be current in their bias class. So I would expect that it would be a year or every 2 years of their agency providing a bias class of some sort. So I would expect these numbers to be different once the model policy has had time to everybody to catch up to the new model policy standard.
So for clarification, is there a bias? What exactly is required in this regard, and what classes are available?
Well, right now we're just putting out there that they have to have some sort of bias class. It was recommended during the model policy that a K-9 specific race and policing course was established. We did not get funding for that. So it has been requested that can be put in front of the legislators to get us funding to create that course. So as of right now, it is pretty generic, but we do want them to have taken some course, at least probably once a year, if not more.
Okay, so in my experience, because we're an accredited agency and we do an annual impartial policing review of all of our activities. And one of the goals is always to do some sort of in-service bias training, impartial policing training. And to be honest with you, there's not really much out there that I've found. And so I guess my only concern is we're now requiring an agency to provide or have provided something that we don't really have. And if we do have it, it certainly doesn't likely address the specificity of the application of canines and the history of the intersection of race and policing and canine applications. I don't know what to say.
Right. Yeah, you're correct, sir. And when I look at their training, they did supply their agency training, and that's where most of their training has come from, some agency bias class that they had at their agency or something that they took on their own. And all of that information is in each packet that was submitted for review.
Vice Chair Quinn?
Yeah, just a high level point. You know, and part of the reason why I wanted to have Mike Devine speak is just to say that we are on the path. And then, you know, here's an example of it's unfunded mandate. And I have kind of a global question. Can we, you know, is it appropriate to want compliance, and then we don't have the pieces available that they could even engage with. And then, you know, just thinking about the AG's office and kind of, are we setting ourselves up for folks saying that you made an unreasonable request without providing a mitigating option?
Or in this case, even the ability to comply with it. Commissioner Raynon?
Well, I just want to point out that the Initiative 940 has been in place for, I think, a couple of years now. And in that, there was a race and policing training requirement. So would that not, ensuring that our certification, canine certification folks have at least had that level of training, would that not be sufficient or appropriate to have them have that training at the very least?
I'm not
And
sure that
they are all up to standard as far as their mandated training.
Okay.
I just couldn't find a specific, you know, where it said anything biased, but as far as if they're mandated, their 24-hour or their CIT, their LATASCA training, they were all, as far as I know, they are all up to date, except for maybe the one that just came out.
but that doesn't specifically include a bias-based training curriculum
Right.
currently.
Right.
So again, back to Vice Chair Quinn's point is, we all know what we want to see, but there currently is not a path to get there. That's at least not created by the commission. So, you know, is it capricious and arbitrary to say, well, you've got to have this training, and then we say, well, of course we don't have it. Mr. Devine?
Yeah, maybe I can help clear it up just a little bit. This discussion actually, we had a pretty robust discussion about this during the panel, during the creation of the model policy. We recognized that there was a deficiency as far as a canine specific history of race and policing curriculum. So in the basic academy, recruits get 12 hours of the history of race and policing. There's an ongoing state, and I believe Commissioner Raynon mentioned it, under I-940, that ongoing in-service training of bias, excuse me, bias policing training is required. That was the discussion we had in the panel, that at minimum, the evaluators and handlers had to be compliant and current on their required state mandated training. We are in the process of seating a commission canine advisory panel, and some of these questions were going to be addressed going forward. I think Valerie mentioned we did not have the budget to develop a canine specific history of race and policing training, but that is still part of the ongoing discussion process. So, and these handlers and evaluators, they are attesting that they are current and with their mandated state training. So they are signing a document to the commission attesting that they are current and correct in their training. So I don't know if that helped, but I just kind of wanted to add that little point.
Well, I think maybe it just comes down to the column that says date of last bias class. That may be inclusive of the fact that they are current on their 24 hours of in-service training, but there is not necessarily, I guess what I want to be transparent with our commissioners is there's not currently a specific class in accordance to the recommended model policy that addresses this particular training, because there is no such training. So I don't want people, the commissioners, to have it, you know, mistakenly believe or understand that that's what that means in that column. What that column means is they've completed their 24 hours of mandated training at whatever it is to that point. Commissioner Webb?
Thank you, Chair Myers. Just 2 points of inquiry. Just to follow up on Commissioner Raynon's point, there is training outlined in WAC 139 11020 that followed up on 940 that I guess I would, that talks about learning about the history of race and policing and culture and differences and experiences. And I guess I would describe that as bias training. And so I just wonder sort of what the requirements are for these individuals to participate in that training. And then my second question, related question, Chair Myers, so just so I understand, when you say this training doesn't exist, it isn't available currently, do you mean specific to canines? Is that what we're talking about? Or do you mean more broadly that bias training isn't available?
I would, in my experience, I would say both. It's certainly not for canine specifically, but it's been a challenge to find courses that are, so CJTC is rolling out the blocks like this particular in-service training block talked about fines and fees, or I can't remember the name of it exactly, which is kind of along those lines. It's getting into there, but again, without, as I said earlier, the only concern is I just want everybody to understand what it is that we're actually looking at and what we do and don't have yet. And Director Alexander, I think you were going to answer that question, or do you want me to jump to Commissioner Robinson?
You can let Commissioner Robinson go if you'd like, sir, and then I can respond afterwards.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, I'll try to make it brief, and pardon the background noise. Little man is very active today.
We saw him in front of the camera and we thought it was quite an improvement, but I didn't want to say that out loud.
Right. My better self, right? Someday.
There you go.
So I think, what I really kind of am led to articulate is that the importance of getting the bias thing narrowed down, because I remember pieces of that conversation. It was a very robust conversation. Yes, the history of race and policing and the nuance of race and policing and canines was very robust, and it was robust for a reason, because there's a gap, right? And to me, you're identifying that gap. And so what we have is we have an industry that has a marked and verified propensity towards some specific biases. And what we don't necessarily have on the table are countermeasures regularly and sustainably implemented to counter that, right? To challenge that, to retrain or to train away from that, to mitigate those biases, right? So I just wanted to take a minute and really kind of nail that piece down and speak that into the space and on the record. We must get that figured out in the immediate future, to where we not only are addressing biases as they currently exist, biases as they have historically existed, the nuances of biases, and the mitigating bias mitigating techniques that can help really turn that. And then there must also be continual circle around, because any place in Washington State where I have seen bias training done, and there are some municipalities that are, and some law enforcement entities that are doing bias training, they're not requiring circling back around. And when you take a look at the foundation of bias training and the things that work on it, it makes mandatory circling back around on the issue is what actually shifts the behavior. So the one and done thing doesn't work. Doing the one and done, doing it one and then, circling back, whatever, 10 years later doesn't get it done. It must be implemented. It must take in the entire context, and it must be continually brought back up to be in a way that allows for the individual, the organization to process how that's actually playing out in real and current time.
Yeah, thank you. And there have been trainings. Our agency did have hosted a class from the CJTC some time ago. And so there are some professional speakers and different folks. But again, I just wanted to be clear that what it is we're talking about today. Director Alexander?
So there's a few things thank you, Chair. A few things I want to address. There is a very big difference between the history of race and policing course that we have developed for our basic law enforcement academy and the implicit bias training. We were doing, before COVID, we had Dr. Bryant Marks, who would come here once a month and in the auditorium hold implicit bias training. All were welcome. King County Sheriff's Department actually sponsored that training. Jarrell Wills, our deputy director, had a lot to do with that. And so that was a great opportunity for us to open the doors for everybody to come in and have implicit bias training. The training that is required by 1064 is a history of race and policing, which to me is different. So we have not developed the history of race and policing as an advanced level class yet, but we are teaching it to all of our basic classes. Alex Bice is working on that for an advanced level. And then we also want to offer an implicit bias training here. And I've been in conversation with a couple of different people, because what we have to do in order to do this, we can't have someone that can come to every class. We just have too many classes and we have too much need and request for it. So talking to people about maybe coming, allowing us to record it, and then putting it online and pushing it out that way is very important. Also in this budget, we requested that C2 app that we've talked quite a bit about, where we can push out micro learning trainings to every police officer in the state, and we will be able to track who's taking that training. So we have some really good things coming up. We're just not quite there yet. And we know that we don't want to put officers at a disadvantage by not having the product, but then requiring them to take it. So some of that belongs to us, but we are very quickly improving on that. And a lot of it had to do, Dr. Mark stopped traveling completely after COVID, and we stopped having people come here live because it just wasn't the way we could do things anymore. But looking at moving forward, we should have a really great product out pretty soon. And that's kind of where we are, but those are two different trainings that we are developing. They're not, the implicit bias and the history of race and policing, two separate trainings.
So in the interest of moving this forward, I guess what I've realized is that we have a desire to have this training. As Commissioner Robinson put it, it's not a one and done. I agree with that completely. But on the same token, we have some canine evaluators, and what the evaluators do is actually go watch the team. Do they do this right? Do they do this? They go through a checklist of, does the animal, does it go through does it obey the commands? Does it do this? Does it do that? So I don't think what we're asking of the canine evaluators is, they're not doing the training. They're not presenting training about inherent bias or the role of race in policing, but we want them to be aware of it. And so I guess for today, the question before us is, do we want these evaluators to continue to work on our behalf, to certify those teams, to make sure those teams are doing what they're supposed to be doing, the nuts and bolts of canine work, understanding that we are still in the process of really dialing in, as to borrow a term from Commissioner Robinson, dialing in this training to make sure that these awareness, because awareness is what brings change, that this awareness is occurring. And it's an ongoing thing, not we're going to be back 5 years from now and say, well, did you do the training? Yes or no? We can, Commissioner Logue, can we drop the screen just so I can, because it's really hard to see everybody. Drop the shared screen. Yay, thank you. Commissioner Logue.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a quick question. I'm an oversight guy. So as these folks will go out and certify these teams in the name of the commission, is it something that the commission can go out and watch and evaluate as well? I've had some previous background in certifying canine teams quite some time ago. So it's a fascinating thing to watch. But I also know that it's trust but verify is a real thing.
I would say, just to answer your question, as a commissioner, you can go anywhere you want and do whatever you want. But I would say that as far as the commission itself checking on the evaluators that we're appointing, I think we are taking it, we are certifying their expertise and their integrity to be doing our work on our behalf. Would you agree, Director Alexander? And again, remember, this process is fairly new, because at one point, what was happening is agencies were like certifying themselves, and then they'd send in a thing, and then we'd send them a certificate saying, oh, hey, you're certified. And no one from the commission, whether they be these appointed people or otherwise, were doing anything to make sure things were happening. So this may seem to our new commissioners, this may seem like it's not much or not enough, but it's 100% more than what we were doing before, which was basically sending out a certificate. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
It absolutely does. Thank you.
Commissioner Webb?
Thank you, Chair Myers. 2 points. You know, I welcome discussion if anyone thinks I'm wrong on this. But first, I personally would prefer not to recertify the folks who did not provide a date to Valerie on their last bias training, even if, as I understand it, that they may not be out of compliance. It seems like a low bar. Valerie followed up, gave them every opportunity to provide that date. They're asking us to recertify them. I just feel like that is a low bar, and I personally would be uncomfortable recertifying those folks who didn't provide that information upon request. And then just to a larger point, just to put it out there, I would be interested, especially if we're doing more meetings in the future, in a larger briefing on this subject of what implicit bias training is available. I think that this chicken and egg issue will come up again in the future. And so just sort of a clear understanding from everyone on us, sort of what is available, I think will just be helpful for a number of future discussions.
Thank you. And I'm just sharing my personal experience on our agency, because as an accredited agency, we do the impartial policing review. We review all of our infractions, our citations, our arrests. We even review our civil actions. You know, when we seize and forfeit property, like under a drug situation, we actually evaluate the people involved in those to make sure that unilaterally we're looking at. And one of the interesting things with bias that I've found in my research is it's really easy to get hung up in the statistics, but the statistics don't necessarily tell the story. So in other words, when I've done research, even with agencies that are under DOJ consent decree, it doesn't make it clear if let's say your population is, you have a demographic of this percentage of people, but you issued this many tickets, this many people. Let's say there's a 5% difference. Is that bias? I can't find any place where anyone's ever said 5% is okay, but 20% is too much. Or does that make sense? It's very dependent on your community. And I think one of the concerns I have had as chief is in my interest in trying to bring this training forward every year, preferably, there's not much out there to do that. So, and then certainly having something online to open people's minds is really what we're talking about here. We're not here to force anything. We're here to say, here's what's going on. This is the history. This is where this is. This is why people feel this way. And I think anytime you can expand your mind, you learn, and that learning changes behavior. So, or it reinforces good behavior. You know, I hate to continue to carte blanche think that everybody in law enforcement are terrible people, because that's not my experience. But there are people that don't do a good job, and that's what we're trying to address. So what I heard from Commissioner Webb was perhaps a motion.
I second that motion.
Would you like to make the motion, Commissioner Webb?
So, Chair Myers, I would love to make a motion to certify the folks, everyone who has provided a date of their last bias training. I would like to make that motion.
Thank you. Vice Chair Quinn, do you second the motion?
I second the motion, and I think if I could just add to Commissioner Webb is move a list of names as a slate for those that provided a date and were responsive to the administrative steps that are necessary.
Is that acceptable, Commissioner Webb?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Before us is a motion to approve the canine evaluator applications of those who provided the specific dates as the last bias class, which I see is just 2 that would not be current or would not be passed in this motion should it proceed. Is there any other discussion regarding the motion?
Yeah, if I could, I mean, the reason why I'm supportive of the motion is it kind of sets a standard going forward. The expectation is if there's a question asked, you provide the information, because that is consistent kind of with a kind of process, and it's, you know, on the path to change. And so I think it's just I think it's great to have an honor system But I think it's even better to have the specificity of responding to the question that was asked, so we don't have questions in this space as we approve them.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is it's just a matter of respect. You know, if we need that information, and it makes it streamlines the process when we can go down the list and have everything accounted for. I had some. Oh, and also, and for staff, if we could peg a future meeting in what Commissioner Webb had asked for, which was have a little bit more robust discussion on where we are with 940, where we are with LaTaxa, where we are with these different training opportunities that need to be brought forth. Again, as an agency, it's really hard to find anything, and you certainly don't want to, you know, order some like 1999 online thing that may or may not be appropriate for your community nor your state. You know, and I'll tell you, there's vendors out there that'll sell you anything, but it may not be what you want. And I wonder sometimes, I personally believe that bad training is worse sometimes than no training. And so it's important that we develop things that are going to be sustainable and that are going to create the effect that we intend. So if we could make a note on that, Director Alexander.
Got it, sir.
I think part of what that does, what that telegraphs to me is what I've said before is, and I said in the last meeting, aspirations and goals that are unfunded are just that. So we need to be having those discussions with our legislators and our OFM and the governor's office to say, hey, you know, we're really serious about this, but gosh, as commissioners, we just found out that there isn't a training for this. So how are we going to, what would you have us do to fix this gap? Because obviously what I hear from this group is you're passionate about fixing those gaps. Director Alexander?
So I really don't want to take anything away from our hardworking staff, and Alex Buys has been working through that list to create those trainings. So she created the Holocaust had put it together so it would be available for our officers, the Holocaust for Humanity training. She's also working on the LGBTQ plus community training. She has also completed the fines and fees. And so there's a lot of training, and this is just in the last few months because really no one was really interacting with us a lot during the COVID time. So I just really want you all to know that this is moving forward. And there is some training that we're looking at that we really, and again, to try to get a presenter to record the training and get it moved forward. That's where the real dollars are coming in, but we've paid for some of the training. So we did have some money. So we're happy to give you an update on it and schedule that for the next meeting or meeting after, whenever we can push it in, because you guys have a lot going on. But I really look forward to being able to give you a presentation on where we are and what training has been completed.
Thank you. And by no means are these discussions trying to insinuate that staff aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think it's more of a matter of allowing us, as all commissioners, whether we've been here for a while or we're new, to get our feet on the ground and understand, you know, get our hands around what we're asking and making sure that it's reasonable and attainable, because no one wants to set anybody up for failure. That's not what we're here for. So before us is a motion. Is there any further discussion regarding the motion? And the motion is to approve the K-9 evaluator applicants that provided the date. There's 2 of whom who did not, and the rest will be approved as a panel. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, if you either raise your hand or put up your little electronic hand. I think I see everybody. Now, is there anyone who opposes the motion? I'll let everybody clear. Commissioner Joseph, are you in opposition?
No, I was just raising my hand.
All right. I know this is one of those things where it's the Zoom thing is kind of awkward. So the chair recognizes the motion carries. Commissioner Joseph, did you have something you wanted to add? No. Okay.
Nope.
Thank you. All right, motion carries. So we'd ask staff to notify the 2 panel evaluator applicants of the deficiency, and perhaps they can correct that by the next time we have these before us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up are hearing panel applicants.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. Prior to today's meeting, you were provided with the hearing panel member packets for our certification hearings, which included the application, cover letter, resume, and letter of support and/or recommendation. Under RCW 43-101-380 and WAC 139-06060, Commissioners appoint panel members for certification hearings. There are 17 peace officers seeking approval to serve on the peace officer certification hearings. There are 11 corrections officers seeking approval to serve on the corrections officer certification hearings. There is 1 tribal officer seeking approval to serve on the tribal officer certifications hearings. There are 4 commissioners, 3 members of the public, and 1 individual with expertise and background in police accountability that is seeking approval to serve on the certification hearings for all hearings. Those positions would serve on the peace officer, corrections officer, and tribal officer certification hearings. I have confirmed that these applicants meet the legislative requirements, and I'm requesting that you approve these applications today.
So just a point of clarification, I noticed that some of the officers or the people on, like, for example, peace officer, I see are currently commissioners. So could they serve as a commissioner on a panel and on that particular panel? So they should be in both lists, or just the list that they're on?
The, for example, Commissioner Anya and Commissioner Sapp, they would sit on the seat for their specific rank. So they're not necessarily sitting as a commissioner on those seats. They're sitting as in the capacity as first line supervisor or below, and then for Sapp as a corrections chief for the corrections certification hearings. And then the commissioners that are listed under that category, they fit specifically in the civilian member of the commission category, which then breaks down who those seats would be.
Great. And if you are interested in doing that, please get your name in there so we could add you to the list. Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, Sean, I see you. I see you. Hey, this is it's just the real world. I just assumed that since I put my name in the hat back in the day that it was going to continue over. So I just have to own that I did not redo that again. I just assumed it was going to carry forward. So I would like to officially make sure that my name is entered in to that list from the commissioner aspect of community member east of the Cascades for the panel.
Absolutely.
Is there a motion to add Commissioner Robinson, or we can add? Actually, let's just add Commissioner Sapp. I have unless there's objection, we'll add him to the list, and we can add him to this list, and then we can go through the. Okay, I see a lot of nodding heads. Is there any objection? Great, thank you, Commissioner Robinson. Commissioner Couch.
Thank you, Chair Myers. I too wanted to just offer up, since we have a deficit of tribal officers, if there is a need, I would be happy to serve in that capacity to try to help out, if that would be okay with the commission.
Yes, and just to confirm for the category, just want to confirm that seat would need to be either a chief and or a first line supervisor or below.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So I will add you as well.
Any other additions to our?
Thank you,
Commissioner Johnson?
I just want to make sure that my whole entire complete name is on there, not just Trina Johnson, but Katrina Johnson, please.
My apologies. I will get that updated.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank
Is there
you.
anyone else that would like to be added to the list of commissioners before we review the document as a whole? Going once, going twice. Great. Okay.
And oops, sorry, Chair. These positions, a lot of these positions are going to be open and continuous until we have a large enough pool to select from for each hearing panel. So if you decide at a later time that you would like to put your name on the list, we can definitely get you approved at one of the future commission meetings.
Is there anyone else that would like to, especially our new commissioners, that would like to now be aware that the panels are only called if the matter, decertification matter goes to hearing. So many of these matters are settled ahead of time, or the officer does not contest the decertification action. So this is not like jury duty, like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck with jury duty, try to figure out how to get out of this, like all good American citizens. But this is more of along lines of when we actually have a panel that's needed, you may or may not be called, and then you basically sit like a jury on these matters. And so I can't emphasize enough that with the change in the law, that it does bring our commissioners to that table that heretofore we've never been at. And I think it would be very valuable to have commissioners available for that process. Vice Chair Quinn?
And just a question kind of along with Commissioner Lokes. And I know probably in these spaces, there's some sensitivity, so I'm sure there's some confidentiality. You know, I like probably all of you are oversubscribed, but in particular, being a council member, I would want to, well, I just don't think it would be appropriate for me to serve, but it would be fantastic to observe one, right? Because this is a new process. And then that way, you know, I think it's a great opportunity for emphasis on the importance of this process. And quite frankly, what would be great is if WCIA would come and observe too, just so they know.
Absolutely. And I will note, our hearings are open to the public. Currently, they are being conducted virtually via Zoom. Our full list of hearings, upcoming hearings, is posted on the website. The day prior to the hearing, the Zoom link is posted and available. So anyone is more than welcome to attend and kind of watch in the background, just like this meeting is happening. They have that same opportunity to watch all of the hearings. The only thing is the deliberations are not open to the public, but you do have the opportunity to see the whole hearing start to finish and kind of get an idea of how it works, how they're set up, and what the kind of layout structure is like.
If I could be so bold as to suggest that when you have a hearings coming, maybe send out a link for the commissioners that are interested in spending the time.
Absolutely. We have one coming up on March 23rd and 24th, scheduled to be a 2-day hearing, and then one scheduled for April 5th as a virtual hearing. So I will make sure that the Zoom link is shared with the commissioners, and they can tune in if they choose to.
And beyond that, if commissioners wanted to observe the entire process, we just have to check with our AAG as far as what that would look like if you wanted to be the fly on the wall, so to speak. But again, I would emphasize that you as commissioners have this authority. That's why you're in this position to make these decisions. Commissioner Dravis Crutch.
Yes, I've been Dravis.
Dravis Crutch.
It's fine. I've been
sorry.
into throwing my name into the hat, so I think it's a great opportunity.
Okay.
I'll jump
Great.
in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You definitely fit one of those seats we are looking for, so I appreciate that.
Commissioner Hunter, I will not mess up your name.
Very much, Chair Myers. I would like to add myself as well to the pool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for doing that. And I think it'll maybe demystify the process a little bit. And when that link comes out, if the commissioners get a chance to see the process, assuming it even goes. I think the context is, and Director Alexander can correct me if I'm wrong, we have about 20 to 30 of these a year. So it's not like, and a lot of them just don't go. And there's a lot of these cases that you never see because the person just does not appeal the action of the commission. Commissioner Pickup.
Yes, I was wondering how long would one sit on that committee or board for the decertification?
If there's a hearing, if there is a hearing, you'd be on that particular hearing. So for example, the ones that are coming up are 2 days. So you'd have to, participate in that hearing entirely from beginning to end for the 2-day process and then render a decision.
No, I mean, once you put your name in, or is
That's
there
a great question. I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
I suppose
absolutely.
for you, you're appointed to commissioner for 6 years. So theoretically, long as you're available.
Yep,
Okay,
and
so
that
at any time, like, let's say next year, like, I'm just saying I kind of want to learn a little, view the process, learn a little about it before I submit my name. And so, like, let's say in 6 months, is it still available to submit my name, or,
yes, absolutely. You can at
Absolutely.
any
So,
time
so
throw
the
your name
process
in.
for appointing panelists is done by the commission. So everybody else that's listed here that's not a commissioner has to be approved by us. But in theory, you're already a commissioner, so it's just a matter of you saying, "Hey, throw me on there." And I don't think there really necessarily needs to be any action by the commission, other than we would certainly want to give public notice that you're available to be a panelist. That'd be it.
okay, so it is like jury duty. Some people you just get picked for that particular. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, thank you. I'd like to be added to the list also then.
Yay, thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, countering your narrative,
All right.
Chief, it is like jury duty.
I shouldn't have used that analogy, I guess.
Yes,
Our
and Chair,
esteemed,
I would
yeah,
like to just
sorry.
piggyback off that real fast. Is just, this is the selection of people for us to pull from. So just because your name is on the list does not mean that you will be on every hearing. It's just that we have enough people to kind of rotate through. So if we have, let's say, 20 hearings a year, you have the potential to serve on anywhere from 1 or 2 to maybe 5 or 6, just depending on who I can find that's available to sit on those seats. So it is very much like jury duty. And
Thank you, Commissioner Pickup.
added.
We will now hear from our esteemed Assistant Attorney General, Justin Cato. Make sure you make this good, because your boss is not on camera, but he is listening.
For the commissioners that don't know, I'm Assistant Attorney General Justin Cato. I'm the programmatic Assistant Attorney General for the commission. So part of my role is to support the hearings panel in providing legal advice that they need throughout this process, the hearings process. And just to kind of clarify a little bit more on what Kayla was talking about, the new statutes that were passed last year require in each hearing panel that there be one civilian member of the commission. So on each of those hearings panels, there will need to be one commissioner, at least one commissioner filling the role. There might be multiple commissioners if they're filling other roles, such as Commissioner Sapp filling the corrections chief role. But on every one, there's going to have to be at least one civilian member on it. So if you only have 4 civilian commissioners, I believe that number is now up to 6 or so. You're going to have to be, the bigger the pool, the less often each member will need to sit on a hearings panel. Currently, I want to say we are doing in the neighborhood of 6 hearings per year, around that, with some fluctuation. I believe the certification staff anticipates that number will increase. It's hard to say exactly, but it'll probably double or more once the new certification standards have kind of kicked in, and we'll start seeing more of these hearings panels that take place. Just wanted to offer my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I think again, when I mentioned how many actions that go on, it's 20 to 30 a year. But thank you for the context. Only maybe 5 or 6 of those actually go to hearing. So in other words, it's kind of like I said, when the commission takes action, oftentimes, obviously, overwhelming majority of the time, the action is not contested. So there's no reason for a hearing. Does that sound accurate, Kayla?
Yes, that is correct. And we won't be trying any of the new cases under 5051 until July. So hearing panel members, we're just getting our panel squared away. And then once we start getting those new cases, this is when the new panel makeup will go into play. So you can't expect to be on a hearing until probably at least 6 or 7 months out at a minimum.
Yeah, I think that addresses Commissioner Pickup's concern, and you have a lot of time to get your feet under you. So, and I think also the thing to think about here is you are bringing, as a commissioner, you're bringing your life and lived experience that brought you to the commission to the member of the panel. So I don't, you're going to hear the evidence and you only consider the evidence presented to you because it's very much like a trial. There's a prosecutor, the AAG, the Attorney General's office represents the state and presents their case, and then the officer and or his attorney or her attorney would present the defense, and then you render a verdict, and that's kind of how that thing works. So pretty straightforward all in all. So I appreciate all of you that volunteered to be added to the list. Now, if there is a action or a motion by the body to certify the list of members as indicated, that would be great.
And just for the record, I do have that 9 commissioners are have been presented with the new additions. So that puts us at a total of 9 just sitting on the community commission seat.
Awesome.
I'll make a motion to approve the list.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Commissioner Kelsey. Is there any discussion regarding the motion? Inclusive of the additional folks that volunteered today? Thank you for stepping up.
I'm sorry, Chair Myers, those that are
You need
on
to
the list.
abstain from voting for yourself?
No, I'm not. Well, that's what I'm going to ask. We shouldn't vote for ourselves. Right?
Oh.
That is correct.
Gee. I don't see where there'd be a conflict personally of voting. I mean, you're voting for the panel as a whole. I don't know you're individually voting for yourself. I think I as a chair don't see a problem with it, but I'll defer to anyone else who's more of an expert in this than I am. Commissioner Raynon?
Yeah, I just following up with that, if all of us who put our names in can't vote for ourselves, are we going to have a quorum enough to approve the list? So.
I agree. I think as a matter of order, the chair would offer that the motion is to approve the panel as a whole, and I don't think that there is a conflict of interest for a commissioner serving on such panel to not be able to vote. I see no conflict of interest, and unless the attorneys in the room want to disagree. Vice Chair Quinn?
Just briefly, I mean, in other spaces, like on the council, we'll have advisory groups where ultimately the council member is voting for themselves. So voting as a slate is a way to get there. So I could see if it was something different, disciplinary thing or other components, but it's not inconsistent because it's not only volunteer, but you have to, I mean, there's a procedure and a process as you serve on the panel. If you don't follow that, then that's a different story.
Yeah, and in theory, the commissioners the civilian commissioners that are making up that one section wouldn't need to be approved anyway because they just would have standing. So it's really only the couple of commissioners that might be wearing 2 hats. And again, I don't see that as a conflict unless someone else does. I don't see it as a conflict of interest or as anything that would be unprofessional. So with that, is there any further discussion regarding the motion before us? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand or all right, I think I see everybody. Thank you. Now we'll give everybody a chance to clear their little virtual hands in their virtual world and their virtual box. And are there any, no attorneys like to object to everything, but I think guessing that just want to lower your hand or you, oh, and is there anyone who objects to the motion? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody stepping up to do that. I know it's sometimes it's out of our comfort zone, but I guarantee you it will get better, and value the process. And hopefully with the opportunity to view the public nature of one of these hearings will give you a better idea of not only the process, but more importantly, perhaps, and these, again, these are actions prior to the initiative or the initiation of the new decertification criteria. And so it'll give you an idea of what the type of cases that the commission has been handling. We've had a discussion, I've had a discussion with the director about maybe providing a list or a summary of maybe in the last year or two of actions, if the commission's interested to know, you know, like the basis of charges. I'm just offering it there. You know, again, it's one of those discussions you can have, or we can have, to give you a flavor of the type of cases that we're talking about. My experience, at least, is from the periphery. I've never sat on a panel, but I have officers who have volunteered and sat on panels. Is oftentimes a conduct I would consider fairly egregious, and so I think that I think it'll be enlightening, because I think there's sometimes a perception that law enforcement hasn't been holding folks accountable, and that has been, and certainly there are places that have been missed, but the process of decertification has been occurring. It's just maybe not well advertised, and again, the majority of which never, you know, are never contested in the first place. All right.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you very much. Next up are definitions.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to present this to the commission. Presenting these definitions covers two requirements for the certification division of the Training Commission. First, under Senate Bill 5051, there is now new reporting requirements to the Training Commission on the use of force that results in substantial or serious bodily injury, whether that be either physical force or the application of lethal force. One of the issues was that while Senate Bill 5051 and now the RCW describes the force as serious injury, the RCW did not have a definition for serious injury. So in putting these definitions together, and because serious injury is used in our reporting requirements, and also as some of the commissioners who sat on the K-9 panel, we also had to come up with a K-9 specific serious injury definition because it was not defined by RCW. So under serious injury, what we have done is combined two of the RCW definitions to be included in the reporting requirements under serious injury. And I will read them to you. You can find them under RCW 9A 04110, subsection 4, subsection B and C, and I apologize for that. And we can provide those documents also if you have not had a chance to review them. The first one, substantial bodily harm, means bodily injury which involves a temporary but substantial disfigurement, or which causes a temporary but substantial loss or impairment of the function of any bodily part or organ, or which causes a fracture of any bodily part. So that is for substantial bodily harm. The second, defined under RCW, is great bodily harm, which means bodily injury which creates a probability of death, or which causes significant serious permanent disfigurement, or which causes a significant permanent loss or impairment of the function of any bodily part or organ. And so what we would be doing with the approval of these definitions, and we will be putting them into WAC also, is because of our reporting requirements that says serious injury, we wanted to be as inclusive and as close to the established RCW as we could when we made these reporting requirements.
Thank you. And for our newer commissioner members, these are state statutes that officers are very familiar with. This is a charging level of what you would charge, for example, of different levels of assault. Goes up depending on the serious or the nature of the injury. So it's not, these are terms that would not be foreign to a law enforcement or corrections officer. What is the action that we need to take on these particular definitions? And was there a definition of extremist organization? I did have some correspondence from some stakeholders that were comfortable with the definition, but I don't see that here.
Yes, Chair, I am prepared to go. I'm going to go over that. It just is a longer document. So I thought I would do the two shorter definitions first.
So these definitions need to go into WAC. So we need to, do we have a WAC that they need to go into so we can start the WAC process? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and that will be presented to the commission. Currently, most of the WACs are at the being formatted, and we are going to present them to the commission.
Okay, Commissioner Raynon.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that we aren't voting then today to approve this definition, because I noticed serious injury only includes substantial bodily harm and doesn't include great bodily harm in what was presented in our packet today. So are we going to be including both of those definitions in the definition of serious injury? Yeah.
Yes, we're gonna merge them together for CJTC policy and for our reporting standards, because there was no actual definition of serious injury.
Okay, so
it'll
in the
come,
WAC,
it'll come before this body in the WAC.
Okay.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, great.
Mr. Zeller, or Assistant Director Zeller.
Chair, I just wanted to clarify that the WACs will be presented to the commission on April 27th.
Okay. So this is a pre-WAC presentation of the pre-WAC presented.
Correct.
Yes, and I'm sorry for the
Okay.
confusion. We're just on a very tight timeline as far as being able to get these to the commission. So we wanted to kind of go over some of this pre-information that we will be proposing coming up.
And for all the commissioners that haven't been through the WAC process, perhaps some of you I've met from the other side of the table when you've testified on WACs, but it's a pretty extensive process. It's not just a one and done. So you will have a chance to look at these things. You'll have a chance to dissect them. We'll take public testimony. We'll receive public testimony, writing or in person, and have a chance. We just have to fit within the code reviser's time frame that's required by statute as we enact these things, because a Washington Administrative Code, or a WAC, is basically law, but it's agency created law. So it's a little bit different than what the legislature creates in RCWs, Revised Codes of Washington. So if that's helpful. So the next part, for informational purposes then, could you share with us the definition of extremist organization?
Yes, certainly. And this one has a little more emphasis currently because not only is there now a legal requirement for agencies in the backgrounding of potential officers to look for an affiliation with an extremist organization. So that's the first part. The second part is actually there is a portion under the certification revocation process with affiliation to an extremist group. So the RCW did not have a definition of affiliation and or what extremism is. So we had to seated a panel to kind of flesh that out. So we had a workable definition in case any certification issues came before the CJTC. We sat a panel of 11 community and law enforcement representatives, including Washington Coalition for Police Accountability, the State Fraternal Order of Police, Next Step Washington, representatives from the Anti-Defamation League, and representatives from the Peace and Justice Action League of Spokane. We met 4 times, and this was in the packet, and I apologize if some of the commission members didn't get it. And I will say that some of the information we pushed out, I apologize, it was last minute. We literally were working on these definitions up until right before the deadline to get it to the commission for review. We also consulted with a First Amendment attorney and a civil rights attorney, and we had presentations from 2 experts from the Anti-Defamation League on extremism or extremism in law enforcement. So that's just kind of the background of how we arrived at this definition that's going to be up on the screen. One of the things that the discussion was very detailed was we had to be cognizant of the rights of free expression under the First Amendment. And because we didn't have a definition of affiliation or extremism, those were the discussion points. One of the things we did to begin the discussion was in December of 2021, the Department of Defense issued a new Department of Defense policy on affiliation with extremism and extremist activities. And just for background, the Department of Defense has almost 4 million employees, and it's the largest employer in the United States. So we kind of look to them for a background and a baseline of what extremism looked like. It was very well written. It's a long document, but we'd be happy to send it out to any of the panel members who'd like to review it. But that gave us the baseline for our definition. The one that you see up in front of you, and Chair, it's a long document. I can read it if the commission would prefer, or I would let the commission decide whether or not they just want to read it on their own.
I don't think it needs to be read in the record, but I do have a question briefly. I see that the first part about extremist organizations, those are all ORs, but under affiliation, are those, is 1, 2, 3, 1 through 7, are those ORs or are those ANDs?
Excuse me. ORs.
Because if you know from the legislative process, the words do matter. So we don't want to, we want, my belief would be that these are ORs. So
yes, they are.
One or more of these issues are met. Okay.
Yes,
Just
they are.
meets it. So what we have before us is a definition of what an extremist organization is, which exists in the world. And then we have a definition that's tailored to what does it mean for a law enforcement officer to be affiliating with such an organization. Is that correct?
Yes, one of the main discussion points was we kind of steered away from naming organizations because organizations and their makeup and structure can change on a regular basis. We emphasized actually actions and or activities. We did take some of the ideas from the Department of Defense policy, and actually some of the wording in here mirrors that policy fairly closely. We would be using this definition in a certification issue because there is a revocation that could possibly happen with extremist activities in law enforcement. And that's for current law enforcement officers or certified law enforcement officers. There's also the piece about for backgrounding, that the agencies that do the background are required to check for that. So this would be the definition that guides us on both of those parts, or both of those pieces.
Just to be clear, that would be this would be kind of part of the statement of charges if an action was brought before a certified peace officer or a certified corrections officer. But just remembering the commission, probably someplace we don't want, you might want to get in the weeds, or you don't want to look behind the curtain, but there are several law enforcement officers out there that are not subject to the oversight or the regulations that we are talking about. So this is certified peace officers, certified corrections officers.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. Sorry, if I wasn't clear on that. And one of the other points of emphasis is we tried to stay as close to established law as we could, because this policy needs to be both defensible legally and fairly and equitably used. So having established law as our kind of our baseline. So the two RCWs that are quoted there would be in a certification issue, might be part of the statement of charges as the referral to a violation.
Okay. And so my only suggestion would be to add "or" to the 1 through 7 down below. Are there any other suggestions? Again, we're not making a vote or anything today, but this is a precursor to the WAC process. So if the commissioners have anything else they'd like to suggest or add, they could do that now, or they could contact staff later to have that done. But I think it's a good look at it. Commissioner Satterberg?
Wondered if, Mike, if you discussed tattoos under affiliation 1A, B, and C, whether you think tattoos is covered there.
Actually, I don't recall us talking about tattoos.
Good question.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
surprised that hasn't come up, to be honest with you.
It may be that we would look at it under 1A, wearing associated items and symbols. But we can put that back out as a discussion point to the panel. We're still kind of finalizing all the details. And like I said, we worked on this right up until we were almost ready to present it to the commission.
Yeah, I would agree with Commissioner Sadberg. I would like to see what the panel comes up with on that one, because I think we all know what we're talking about. So let's cover it now.
Will do.
Great question. Director Alexander.
Sir, thank you so much. I was just trying to make sure that the email that was sent over was at least mentioned and brought to the commission's attention from the
The
community.
stakeholder email I referred to, yeah. So just to be clear, that we did receive support from an email from the community stakeholder that was in support of the definitions as they are so far. But there is still some contention over another section of this that I don't think has been settled yet. So I'm not sure where that will be in the process.
Yeah, Chair, I might be able to clear that. Yes, there was we had some wording difficulties and some of our legal advice wasn't quite sure on the wording. We're still kind of in the process of trying to flesh that out a little bit to see if that extra portion would be added.
And so if I may, just for clarification, I know there were some hands up, but can we talk about this? Can we get a little bit more specific?
Thank
Because
you.
it's not, yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
which
stop
part?
dancing around the issue. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Thank you. Right before we answer that question, Commissioner D. I'm just going to call you Commissioner D from now on. Sorry.
That works. No, I think that we should get into the weeds a little bit more and then the discussion, and then I can.
Thank you. I apologize for that. Commissioner Joseph.
Hi, so my question is, can you please tell me about the unfinished business from the community that was removed from the definition? And I understand that stakeholders were waiting to address the Constitutional Sheriff's Association. And what is your plan to continue to work on that?
That is
Thank
actually.
you, Mr. Joseph. You just summed up the entire thing we were trying to get to. Thank you. Mike?
Yes, that was one of the talking points of the panel discussion was the issue of the constitutional sheriffs. I will admit to myself, when I began this process, I did not recognize what that institution was or what their ideology was. My understanding, and I'm still a little unclear on it, my understanding is an association of sheriffs across the United States that kind of in a nutshell believe they are the supreme authority of law in their counties, and that supersedes both state and federal law. That language about a affiliation with that particular group as an extremist group did come up. We struggled to find the language that would describe more than a passing association with that group as an extremist group. So that's still the part that we're working on. We did put it out to the civil rights attorney that was advising our group. And he was having a little issue with the language that we were coming up with. So that's the part we're still trying to flesh out, is how to address that particular association.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Commissioner Joseph. Yeah, I think it took me a little bit to find the email, so I apologize for we were going around the circles. But as Mike said, that the discussion point hinges on espouses or advocates for the position that law enforcement powers held by the county sheriff supersede those of any agent, officer, elected official, or employee from any other level of government, and the county sheriff is a final authority within such county. if that helps clarify what it is that they're still discussing. And I think, like we said before, except a WAC is not quite a working document because we try to incorporate what we need in there, but certainly some of the definitions within the document, you know, as far as extremist organizations, we're not specifically listing them. So, because who knows what they may or may not be tomorrow, or what you call yourself tomorrow. I think that's rebranding, as they would say. So, but we know it when we see it, right? And so I think the definitions are more important than maybe the specific group itself by name.
And Chair Myers, if I can just add one talking point, in the RCW, there is a section regarding certification about, I don't like to quote RCW, but I'll read it so I don't misunderstand it, is any law enforcement profession or correctional system or demonstrates an inability or unwillingness to uphold the officer's sworn oath to enforce the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the state of Washington. So there is a portion of RCW that does sort of cover what we're talking about with the constitutional sheriffs. We just haven't quite fleshed that out, what that looks like.
Commissioner Joseph?
So has the community recommended language?
Yes, the panel recommended some language. However, we were still having it reviewed by the civil rights attorney that was advising the panel. So we just weren't ready to present it.
And my understanding from the community group email I have is that they are supportive of the content as it is now, but want to keep working on this other topic.
Yes, that's correct. I apologize for that, Chair. I didn't mention that.
And again, there's no action necessary today, but
because the constitutional,
ahead.
because the constitutional sheriffs are anti-government and anti-democratics and align with a white nationalist. So we do need to address that. Thank you.
Yeah, and then since this is a preliminary, that we'll have many more discussions to come when the WAC process starts. But we all have some research to do.
And obviously, you heard, I would appreciate any assistance or input. This one was kind of a little bit of a stumbling block for us as far as putting this full definition together.
Commissioner D.
I'll just add, I'll throw my name into that hat as a civil rights attorney and also who works with tribes and litigates issues of tribal sovereignty. I think that I might be able to help out, hopefully.
Very, very much welcome. Thank you.
Is that billable hours or is that?
I wish.
Okay. Just thought I'd do a check. No, thank you for that. We appreciate that. I think that's, and I mean, when we talk about having the civil rights attorneys and having this discussion is because we have to, when we're expecting people to follow and respect the rights of others, we have to follow and respect the rights of the people that we're also regulating. So that's that balancing act. I will say, however, from a law enforcement standpoint, as an agency chief, I've made it very clear to my staff, and it's been upheld by courts, that as a law enforcement officer, your rights as First Amendment rights are a little bit different. I'm not saying they're better or maybe less, but in a way they are, because we can hold officers' conduct off duty accountable if it reflects negatively upon the department. So you as commissioners and your ability to exercise your First Amendment rights is different than that of a sitting peace officer or corrections officer, because of the nature in which the office that we represent and the authority that we represent on behalf of the government. So this is some sticky stuff, but we want to make sure we get it right. Would you agree, Commissioner D? Great, thumbs up. Okay.
Yes, full agree.
Thank you. I don't have any other new business on my agenda that I see before me unless I'm missing something. And I think that Commissioner Raynon has hung in there instead of hanging out at the pool. Commissioner Robinson, did you have something else?
Yes, sir. I know that we have that series of meetings coming up. And I'd like to make sure that we pick up where we left off at the meeting, at the prior meeting, to pick up that subject matter of the proactivity or the total context of decertification timeline for an officer's career. We pick that subject matter up and actually have some targeted meetings for that particular subject matter so we can get that one done and behind us.
Yes, sir. That meeting is, we've set aside the special meeting on the 30th to specifically address the topic of applying the decertification criteria as established by Senate Bill 5051. And that will be the sole subject of that particular meeting, unless I will offer if staff has something minor that we can address. I'm thinking like the hearing panel thing that is timely that we need to do, but I think the idea is, what I heard from the commissioners before was we're going to focus on setting aside that period of time, at least 2 hours, to really start that process. The only question we don't have is, do we want to do it virtually or do we want to do it in person? Vice Chair Quinn?
I'm trying to be proactive here. I might have a small thing on the advisory group as we, just kind of a process thing, but I'll be able to talk with kind of staff and those that have volunteered, just so folks know what to expect. And so I have some ideas, but I think I can make it a really quick update, just so we can demonstrate that process is going, and then also laying out a few expectations.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody, do we feel that given where we are by the end of the month and everything else, we're going to try to stay virtual one more time? Do we want to get together for this discussion? What would be your preference?
Well, since you're asking, I'll just chime in. My preference right now is virtual, because that way we can just keep rocking and rolling.
How the
Virtual.
training gets funded.
Sorry, Commissioner Pickup?
I'd like to have the option to do like virtual and in person, like always. Like, I don't know, I don't want to stop virtual. I mean, I understand people are gonna stop wearing masks and things like that, but with the world and our fossil fuel usage and things like that, I don't see any reason to add pollution and things. And also, I'd really like to I think that's one thing that we can say that we have gained out of the pandemic, is being able to lessen our fossil fuel usage and our impact on our environment and global warming.
Yeah, good point. So we'll stay, unless there's an objection, we'll stay for the next meeting for sure. We'll stay virtual. The only reason I suggest doing it in person is it is nice to have that interaction with each other. It's kind of a team building thing, and it also makes an excuse for you to come on the campus and get a chance to talk to staff, see the recruits. So whether we do it as a meeting or maybe we do it as a workshop or something like that, we can keep those options open, because I respect. And I hadn't thought about the gas prices, because I haven't run home for lunch yet, so I'll go by the gas stations to see how much it's changed since this morning when I came to work. And I can guarantee you it's not going the right direction. So I respect that. That's a good point, especially for those of you coming from the east side. And please remember that as commissioners, the state does cover your per diem and travel, so that you don't have to be doing this stuff on your own dime. Just reach out to the director or to Lacey, and they'll make those arrangements for you. So. Commissioner Logue, did you have something else?
No, sir. I was just going to suggest that while we're planning a bunch of meetings every couple of weeks, it might be easier to maintain the virtual option for a little bit.
Yeah, and I know, I see a thumbs up from Commissioner Robinson or his assistant, and so I know that the academy staff with so many classes on campus are concerned about, nobody wants to tempt fate, so we'll continue to do virtual. But I would like to see personally before the end of June, I would love to see an opportunity for us to get together and actually tour the campus together. maybe spend some time, have a brief meeting or a workshop, and have just a chance to kind of get to know each other a little bit better and have that interaction, and then have a chance to see what all the great work that's going on at the commission. All right, with that, having no further business before the commission, this meeting is hereby adjourned, and it's 12:04. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Aloha.